What if I told you that the perfect rhythmic jigging you practice for years is the exact reason you're not catching fish? It sounds crazy, right? We spend all this time learning to be consistent, to be smooth. But today, we're going to talk about why that consistency is making your lure look completely fake. You're about to discover the invisible mistakes that are costing you bites day after day. And the secret isn't in a new $100 lure, it's in how you unlearn what you think you know about jigging. The truth is, most anglers are just scaring fish away. Here's a question to start us off, and I want you to be honest in the comments. Do you truly believe a fish can tell the difference between a movement made by a human and a natural one? Let's get into it. Jigging is one of the first things we learn. It feels fundamental, almost primal. You get a rod, a line, and a piece of lead, and you make it dance. For most of us, we learned by watching someone else, an old-timer on a bucket, a video online, or our own father. And the lesson was always the same. A steady up and down motion is the key. Lift, drop, pause, lift, drop, pause. We've all heard it and we've all done it. We do this for years, and because it works sometimes, we never question if it could be better. When the bite is slow, we blame the weather, we blame the lure color, we blame the barometric pressure. We blame everything except the hands holding the rod. We get stuck in a rut, performing the same mechanical motion, wondering why the fish on the screen don't want to play. Today, we break that cycle. First, let's tackle the biggest lie in jigging. It's the myth of the perfect rhythm. Picture this, you're out on the ice, it's a calm morning, you drop your jig down the hole, and then you start the dance. Up 1 foot, down 1 foot, up 1 foot, down 1 foot. It's like a clock's pendulum, steady and predictable. We do this because it feels right to us humans. It feels controlled and deliberate. We think this perfect consistency will mesmerize the fish into biting. But here is the brutal truth. Absolutely nothing in nature moves like that. A dying minnow does not pulse with a perfect beat. A freshwater shrimp doesn't perform a metronomic waltz on the bottom. Real prey animals twitch. They pause for awkward, unpredictable amounts of time. They dart up suddenly, then slowly, weakly, flutter back down. Their movements are chaotic and flawed. When a big, wary walleye sees your perfectly rhythmic jig, it doesn't see an easy meal. It sees a machine. It sees something totally artificial. It's a red flag that signals danger, not dinner. The first step to catching more fish is to throw that clock out of your head. You have to start thinking like a creature, not a machine. Now let's talk about your rod tip. Your rod tip is a megaphone. Every little movement you make with your hand is amplified down the line. A tiny 1-inch twitch of your wrist can become a massive, unnatural 1-foot leap for your lure 20 feet below. We often see guys on the ice or in a boat aggressively snapping their rod tip up and down. They think they're imparting a lot of action, and they are. But it's the wrong kind of action. It's a violent, terrifying action. Imagine a small baitfish. It doesn't rocket up and down in the water column like an elevator with a broken cable. It makes small, subtle movements. It flutters, it hovers. It might make a short, quick dart, but it's not a convulsive leap. You need to think small. The action comes from your fingertips and your wrist, not your whole arm. The goal isn't to make the lure jump, it's to make it breathe, to give it the illusion of life. So, next time you're out, watch your rod tip. If it's moving more than a few inches, you're probably shouting at the fish instead of whispering to them, and nobody likes being shouted at. Let's move on to the drop. Many anglers make the mistake of the unnatural slam dunk drop. What I mean is this. After you lift the jig, you immediately drop your rod tip, creating a completely clack line and letting the lure plummet to the bottom like a rock. Gravity takes over entirely. Again, think about nature. Does a dying minnow fall like a stone? No, it flutters, it spirals, It fights the fall, trying to stay alive. This slow, wounded descent is one of the most powerful bite triggers there is. When you just drop your lure on a slack line, you kill all of that potential action. The lure just falls straight down, looking like what it is, a dead piece of metal. Instead, you need to control the fall. After you lift, slowly lower your rod tip, trying to keep a slight amount of tension on the line. This is called following the lure down. It allows the jig to flutter, to spiral, to swim on its way back to the bottom. It looks 1,000 times more natural. You'll also be able to detect strikes on the fall, which is when a huge percentage of bites actually happen. Stop slam-dunking your lure. Let it die a slow, tempting death instead. Here's a subtle one that costs people a lot of fish: ignoring your fishing line. Specifically, line memory and line twist. If you're using monofilament or fluorocarbon that has been sitting on the spool for a while, it develops memory. It wants to stay in those coils. When you drop your jig, that coiled memory can cause the lure to spin unnaturally. Imagine a tiny baitfish. It might dart and turn, but it doesn't do 360-degree pirouettes in place. A spinning lure is another one of those dead giveaways that screams fake to any fish watching it. Line twist, often caused by the lure itself or by reeling against the drag, does the same thing. It creates a constant, robotic spinning motion. Before you even start jigging, drop your lure in the water near the surface and watch it. Is it spinning? If so, you need to fix it. You can do this by letting some line out behind the boat or just letting it hang to untwist. Using a high-quality ball-bearing swivel can also help a lot. Don't let your line's bad habits ruin an otherwise perfect presentation. A spinning lure is an ignored lure. All right, let's talk about the pause. We're all taught to lift, drop, and then pause. The pause is critical. It's often when the fish strikes, but many anglers make their pause too dead. Their dead stick pause is literally, completely dead. They hold their rod so still it might as well be in a rod holder made of concrete. And while a pause is good, a completely lifeless pause can be unnatural. Think about a living creature, even when it's holding still. It's never perfectly motionless. A minnow is subtly adjusting with its fins. A bug on the bottom is shifting its legs. There's always some form of micro-movement. That's what you want to imitate. During your pause, don't just freeze. Try to hold the rod as still as you can, but let the natural tremors in your hand transmit down the line. You can even try to create a very subtle, almost imperceptible shake or quiver. You're not trying to move the lure, you're just trying to make it feel alive. This tiny hint of life during the pause can be the difference between a fish just looking at your lure and a fish deciding to inhale it. Your pause shouldn't be dead, it should be breathing. This next one is more of a mental mistake. It's the mistake of fishing for yourself, not for the fish. We humans are creatures of habit. We find a jigging rhythm that feels comfortable, and we stick with it. We might do a snap, snap, fall cadence because it feels good in our hands. We do it all day long, regardless of what the fish are doing, but the fish have moods. Their activity level changes throughout the day. In the morning, they might be aggressive, chasing down a fast-moving, erratic jig. By midday, they might be sluggish and neutral, only willing to inspect a lure that is barely moving on the bottom. If you're using that same aggressive snap, snap, fall cadence when the fish are in a negative mood, you're not tempting them, you're annoying them, you're spooking them. The best anglers are constantly adapting. They're paying attention to their electronics. If fish come in to look but don't bite, they change the cadence. They slow it down, they speed it up, they try tiny twitches, they try a long, slow lift. They are reacting to the fish's mood. Stop fishing a certain way because it feels right to you. Start fishing in a way that feels right to the fish. Let's examine the constant nervous twitch. This is a common habit, especially for impatient anglers. They can't stand the idea of a pause, so their jig is in constant motion. It's an endless series of little jiggles, twitches, and shakes. They think that constant motion equals constant attraction. But let's look at this from the fish's perspective. What does a constant nervous twitching motion signal in the natural world? It doesn't signal a wounded, easy meal. It signals a creature that is on high alert. It signals anxiety and awareness. It's the movement of something that is actively trying not to be eaten. Or worse, it can look like a small predator, like a crayfish, moving aggressively. A predator fish is looking for signs of weakness. It's looking for a creature that is struggling, disoriented, or dying. That's an easy meal with a high payoff. Your constant nervous twitching is the exact opposite of that. It's a signal of strength and alertness. You need to embrace the pause. You need to embrace the slow flutter. The weakness is what triggers the strike, not the nervous energy. Stop giving your lure anxiety. This one is crucial, especially on the fall. You must learn to forget the tight line and embrace the semi-slack line. When we feel the need to be in constant contact with our lure, we keep the line tight at all times. After we lift, we keep that line tight as the lure goes back down. But a tight line restricts the lure's natural action. Most modern jigs and spoons are designed to have a specific action on the fall. They're made to flutter, wobble, or spiral. They can only do that if they are falling with some slack in the line. If the line is tight, you're just pulling it down. You're forcing it to fall in a straight, unnatural path. You're killing the very action that was designed to attract fish. The key is to find the balance. You don't want a completely limp, slack line where you can't feel a bite, but you need to give it just enough slack, creating a subtle bow in the line so the lure is free to do its thing. This is the controlled slack or semi-slack line. It takes practice to master, but it is absolutely essential. Let your lure dance the way it was meant to dance. Here is a fundamental shift in thinking. You have to stop thinking of your lure as a puppet on a string. When we think of it as a puppet, we focus on the mechanics. We think, I need to lift my hand 1 foot, then drop my hand 1 foot. We are just the puppeteer, and the lure is an inanimate object. So this creates those robotic, unnatural movements we've been talking about. Instead, you need to think of yourself as breathing life into a creature. You're not just moving a lure, you're trying to imitate a dying perch. You're trying to act like a sculpin on the bottom. You have to get into character. What would that creature actually do? It would probably sit still for a long time. Then it might give a little flick of its tail. Then it might try to swim up a few inches before getting tired and fluttering back down. This mindset changes everything. It forces you to slow down and be more deliberate. It makes your movements more random and more natural. Don't be a puppeteer pulling strings. Be an actor playing the part of an easy meal. This mental switch is a total game changer. Let's consider something we can't see, the sound of your line. Water is an incredible conductor of sound and vibration. Your fishing line, especially a braided or fused line, acts like a guitar string. Every time you rip it, snap it, or even just twitch it, it creates a distinct vibration in the water. An aggressive, hard rip of the rod creates a loud twang that can travel a surprising distance. Is this a natural sound? Not really. A bait fish moving through the water creates a subtle pressure wave, a thump, not a high-frequency zing. When you are constantly ripping your jig with extreme force, you might be sending out a sound that is more alarming than it is attractive. This is especially true in calm, clear water. Now, sometimes a loud, aggressive sound can be a good thing. It can call fish in from a distance. But if fish are nearby and in a neutral or negative mood, that loud vibration can be the very thing that pushes them away. Think about being more subtle. Try using slower, longer lifts instead of sharp snaps. Pay attention to the acoustics of your presentation. Are you playing a gentle tune, or are you just making a lot of noise? This is a trap many experienced anglers fall into. It's the one-size-fits-all cadence. You develop a go-to jigging motion that has worked for you in the past. Maybe it's a double pop and pause that has caught you a lot of walleye. So you use it for everything. You use it for perch, you use it for crappie, you use it for lake trout. But different species of fish feed on different types of prey, and that prey moves in different ways. Crappies often feed on tiny zooplankton or small hovering minnows. They respond well to very subtle, slow presentations with lots of pauses. Lake trout, on the other hand, might be chasing fast-moving ciscos. They might want a very aggressive, fast-ripping motion to trigger a reaction strike. Perch often feed on bugs and shrimp right on the bottom, so small hops and drags are key. Using your aggressive lake trout rip for finicky crappies is a recipe for failure. You are presenting the wrong food in the wrong way. You must tailor your cadence to the species you are targeting, and more importantly, to the specific forage they are eating in that body of water. Stop being a one-trick pony. Let's talk about the lure itself. Lure designers spend countless hours engineering specific actions into their baits. A slab spoon is designed to flutter on the fall. A jigging wrap is designed to dart and glide. A tungsten jig is designed for a fast drop and subtle action. The mistake many anglers make is that they overpower the lure's design. They take a lure that's meant for subtle finesse, and they start ripping it aggressively. Or they take a heavy, aggressive lure and try to jiggle it delicately in place. You are fighting against the lure's natural tendencies. This makes the lure look awkward and wrong. Your job as an angler is not to force the lure to do what you want. Your job is to help the lure do what it was designed to do. Before you even use a new lure, drop it in the water next to the boat or in a test tank. See how it acts with different rod movements. Does a short snap make it dart? Does a slow lift make it wobble? Learn the lure's language, then use your rod to help it speak. Stop overpowering your baits and let them work their magic. Here's a dead giveaway that you're an angler, not a fish. It's the telltale sign of a perfectly vertical line. We drop our lure down and we fish it directly underneath us. For the entire time we're fishing a spot, that lure is going up and down in the exact same vertical column of water. Let's be honest, does that seem natural? How often does a minnow or a perch just hang out in one spot, moving only vertically for 10 minutes straight? Almost never. Real creatures move around, they explore, they move horizontally. One of the most effective techniques, especially when fish are finicky, is to break that vertical plane. After your lure hits the bottom, try dragging it a foot to the side. Let it sit, then jig it a few times, then drag it again. If you're ice fishing, use your transducer to your advantage. Try to walk the lure around the cone angle of your flasher. These horizontal movements are far more natural and can trigger strikes from fish that would ignore a purely vertical presentation. It makes you look like a creature searching for food, not a lure hanging from a string. Modern electronics are an incredible tool, but they can also be a trap. The mistake I see all the time is chasing marks on the sonar. A fish appears on your flasher or graph. Your heart starts to pound. What do? You immediately start jigging frantically. You raise your lure up quickly. You shake it aggressively. You're trying to get the fish's attention, but what you're actually doing is panicking, and that panic translates directly to your lure. Your lure starts making fast, erratic, terrified movements. A wary fish sees this and thinks, "Whoa, that thing sees me. It's trying to escape. Something is wrong here." And poof, they're gone. Instead of panicking when you see a fish, You should do the opposite. You should calm down. Sometimes the best thing to do is to just hold the lure perfectly still. Let the fish approach it and inspect it. Make them think your lure is unaware and vulnerable. If you do make a move, make it a small, subtle quiver, as if the lure is just now sensing danger. Don't chase the marks with panic. Entice them with confidence. We've talked about the pause, but let's go deeper. Let's talk about the micro pauses that happen within your movements. These are the tiny hesitations that are almost invisible, but are incredibly important. When you lift your jig, it shouldn't always be a perfectly smooth, fluid motion. Think about a real creature. When it moves, there are tiny stops and starts. A minnow might start to swim up, then hesitate for a fraction of a second, then continue. These are micro pauses. You can incorporate these into your jigging by making your lifts less smooth. Try a lift that is a bit stuttered or jerky. Lift, hesitate for a split second, then lift again. This creates a much more realistic and vulnerable look. It suggests a creature that is injured or uncertain. For a predator, that uncertainty is a massive trigger. It's a sign of an easy meal. Smooth, fluid motions can look too confident, too healthy. Add some flaws to your jigging. Add some hesitation. Those tiny micro pauses can lead to some massive strikes. There is a huge difference between an escape and a spasm. A lot of anglers think a sharp, aggressive rip of the rod is imitating a fleeing baitfish, and sometimes that works to trigger a reaction strike. But more often than not, especially with neutral fish, that huge, violent rip is just a spasm. It's an unnatural convulsion that doesn't look like anything real. An escape is different. An escape is a more controlled, directional movement. Imagine a minnow seeing a predator. It doesn't just spaz out in place. It darts away. It tries to get somewhere. You can imitate this with a rip and glide. Instead of a sharp, vertical snap, use a longer, sweeping rod motion that pulls the lure up and to the side. Then on the fall, give it that semi-slack line to let it glide back down, away from the initial spot. This looks like a genuine escape attempt. It's a motivated movement. The vertical spasm just looks like a glitch in the matrix. It's another one of those things that just looks wrong to a fish. Make your lure look like it's trying to get away, not like it's having a seizure. This one is simple, but often forgotten. Your own presence affects your presentation. Let's talk about your shadow. On a bright, calm day, especially in shallow water, your shadow standing over an ice hole or leaning over the side of the boat can be a massive red flag for fish. It's the classic hawk flying overhead signal. It spells danger. You could have the most perfect natural jigging motion in the world, but if a giant shadow just passed over the fish, it's not going to bite. It's going to be on high alert. Be mindful of your position relative to the sun. Try to keep your shadow away from where you are fishing. The same goes for noise. Stomping around on the ice, dropping things in the boat, or running your auger unnecessarily can send negative vibrations down to the fish. You're creating an environment of danger before your lure even gets wet. A good presentation starts before the cast. It starts with being stealthy and aware of how your own presence is affecting the fish's mood. Be a ghost on the water? Let's dig into our own psychology. Humans have a tendency for symmetry and patterns. We crave order. We see it everywhere. And we apply it to our fishing. We create these perfectly symmetrical jigging patterns. Lift 2 times, pause. Lift 2 times, pause. Or we do a series of 3 small jiggles followed by 1 big one. We repeat these patterns over and over because in our minds, it makes sense. It's organized. But nature is not organized. Nature is chaotic and random. As we've said, prey animals don't move in predictable patterns. By creating these patterns, you are once again signaling that you are artificial. The best thing you can do for your jigging is to be intentionally random. On one drop, try a series of tiny twitches. On the next, try 2 big rips. On the next, Just let it sit on the bottom for 20 seconds. Constantly change your cadence, your rhythm, and your pattern. Never let the fish figure you out. The moment your presentation becomes predictable, it becomes unnatural. Embrace the chaos. That's where the bites are. Here's a higher level concept. Are you fishing the lure or are you fishing the environment? Most people just fish the lure. They drop it down into open water and start their jigging cadence. They're focused only on making the lure dance. But that's not how real prey behaves. Real prey interacts with its environment. A crayfish scurries along the rocks. A sculpin darts between boulders. A minnow hides in the weeds. You need to make your lure do the same things. If you're fishing a rocky bottom, don't be afraid to let your jig hit the rocks. Let it sit there, then pop it up and let it hit the rocks again. This creates sound and it creates puffs of silt, which is an incredibly natural attraction. It looks like a creature foraging for food. If you're near a weed edge, let your jig tick the tops of the weeds. Let it get hung up for a second, then snap it free. This fleeing motion is a massive strike trigger. Stop thinking about your lure in a vacuum. Start thinking about how it can interact with the cover, the bottom, and the structure around it. That is how you truly sell the illusion of life. Finally, we come to the ultimate sin in jigging. It is the root of almost every other mistake we have discussed. It is impatience. We want to catch fish now. We get bored. So we start jigging too fast. We don't let the lure pause long enough. We move from hole to hole too quickly. We don't take the time to really work a spot. This impatience is a poison that infects your presentation. Your hurried, anxious state of mind travels down the rod through the line and is communicated directly to the lure. Your lure moves with that same impatient, nervous energy. And as we've established, that is not an attractive quality to a predator fish. The best jigging anglers are incredibly patient. They can sit and work a lure with subtle twitches and excruciatingly long pauses for minutes on end. They have complete confidence that their presentation is realistic and that eventually a fish will be unable to resist it. You must learn to slow down. Slow down your hands. Slow down your mind. Good jigging is a meditation. It is a slow, deliberate process of breathing life into an object. If you can conquer your own impatience, you will conquer the fish. So let's bring it all together. What have we really learned today? We've learned that our human instinct for order, for rhythm, for patterns, and for control is our worst enemy when we're trying to fool a fish with a jig. We try to be perfect, but nature is beautifully flawed. The most significant aha moment in all of this is when you stop thinking of yourself as an angler operating a lure and you start thinking of yourself as an actor trying to imitate life. You're not just moving a piece of lead, you're trying to become a dying minnow. Your movements should be hesitant, uncertain, and chaotic, just like a real creature in its final moments. This isn't just a small tweak to your technique, it's a complete shift in mindset. It will force you to slow down, to be more observant, and to fish with true intention instead of just going through the motions. When you make that switch, you will finally stop scaring fish and start convincingly fooling them. Thank you so much for watching. If this changed the way you think about jigging, hit that like button and be sure to subscribe for more. Now here's a question for the comments. What's the single most unnatural, robotic, or just plain weirdest jigging mistake you've ever seen another angler make on the water? No names, of course. Let's share some stories and learn from each other. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.